Hello, everyone. I'm Zuza Gonçalves. We have here Anita Gritsch and Keith Terry with us, and also our sign language interpreter. And I want to thank you all for joining us for this talk, and also want to thank Sesc and all the team that is involved in the work behind the scenes to make this happen. So this is a live for the Music Center, for Sesc Music Center. It's a program we have at Sesc, Centro de Música, where we have educational work, educational activities focused in the musical language, music artistic language. And for this year, this was one of the activities for this first semester, a series of lives talking about the legacy of Fernando Barba. We had amazing lives. This is the last one. We have 3 previous lives and that were really great. And just so you guys know, the Centro de Música, the Music Center of Sesc, is a program, and we have a lot of courses and many different instruments and many different educational activities. So make sure you check it out on the second semester. A lot of activities coming and new things about to happen. Today, this talk it's not happening live. We're recording it beforehand. But I'll be there in the chat to interact with you guys while the video is being played. So please make sure you comment on the chat so we can keep a parallel discussion about this interesting topic, and just so we can all participate in this conversation. So I really want to celebrate this special meeting, very special for me, to be here with Anita and Keith. The whole idea behind this is to just, after Fernando Barba left us, I was left with this feeling of, we need to support each other so that we can go on and make this legacy, make this work even more present. So that was very strong in me, like, now that Barba is not here with us, how do we go on, and who carries the torch? And Barba was our greatest torchbearer when it comes to body music in Brazil. And I was like, let's get together and let's talk about how do we carry the torch. And we had amazing talks. So I think all of them people that you, Keith, and you, Anita, know. So we started with Renato Epstein from Barbatuques, and also Ricardo and Patricia Amorim from Batucadeiros. Is a project, a beautiful project in Brasilia. And we talked about Fernando's impact in the musical education scene here in Brazil. Then we had Stênio Mendes and Charles Hazel from Barbatuques talking about their impact on the aesthetic and the technique and the aesthetics of Barba's style and how it impacted Brazilian music and body music. And then last month we had Lu Horta and Cadu Souza talking about what we call the music of gathering, and talking about how Barba would create music with every group of people anywhere, just this element that his music making had, and it was so present in him. And we will wrap it up with you guys talking about the international aspect, the international impact of Barba's work, and really special to have you both here. Anita, we know each other from way back. Actually, we met in Brazil, and you lived here for many years, and it was always like so special for us, like in our study groups way back, to have you here, someone from abroad that was here studying with us, studying this style, studying the technique that Barba developed with the whole community. So that's why I really felt you had to be here, because you're taking also this all around the world. And of course, Keith is like, when we think about what Barba did for us here, what Barba represents here in Brazil, and we think about Keith in the U.S. and in the world. So it's really a reference for all of us on body music and what body music is, and in the body music community worldwide. And I'm so happy to have you here also, Keith, and had the privilege, the joy of being able to cross paths with you and work with you, and here in Brazil and in Ghana. So really happy to also connect to all these experiences with you guys. And
Thank you, Zuza.
I would like to ask you to introduce yourselves to our audience, to our Brazilian audience. I mean, we have people from all around the world watching, but from people here in Brazil that are not necessarily familiar with the body music scene, if you guys could introduce yourself. Perhaps Anita, you could start us off.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for this introduction, Zuza. It's a special honor for me to be with you today as well. Just this really great encounter, and together with Baba, who is here as well. And yeah, it's. I think this encounter of us three is just one example of how Keith would bring people together all across Baba would bring people together all across the group. And Keith did it as well, because that's also how my story in body music started, actually, with the two of you, Keith and Baba, because I went to a body music festival in Istanbul in 2010. That is also where I met Baba for the first time, and then I was just on fire and wanted to go and study with him more and go to Brazil. And it was just very special for me. I was just recently checking old messages I was exchanging with him. He was always so welcoming to invite me to come and introduce me to other people. Well, I'm going into the topic already. I should introduce myself. That was actually the task. So I'm Anita, I'm from Austria, and as I said, I started with body music around 11 years ago. I come from the field of music and movement, which is also called rhythmics. So I work with people, training them how to use this method or these tools in educational settings, with all kinds of target groups. And of course, body music is one of my main fields within this music and movement, which body music is. Yeah, I don't want to make it too long. Maybe I'll pass on to Keith.
Thank you, Anita. I have to say also, I'm so honored to be a part of this. And Zuza, thank you for inviting me. And of course, it's just an honor to be. It's an honor to be honoring Barba, to be a part of that rippling out. And it's so impressive that Sesc is doing this in 4 parts. It's just a great project. I'm so glad it is happening. I live in Oakland, California, in the United States. I started doing body music in 1978. I'm a drummer. I've been playing drums all my life, and I was working a lot with tap dancers during that era. And I was really intrigued by, dance that created its own soundtrack and music that created its own visual choreography. So one day I just stood up and started displacing all the rhythms I was playing on my drums onto my body, and that's how I got started. And I met Barba via the telephone. And first email, and then we phoned, and then I flew to Brazil shortly after that and met him. And that was in 2008, early 2008. So, the rest is kind of history. Barba was part of the first International Body Music Festival in 2008. And one of the main reasons that I created the festival, it was his inspiration and his willingness and openness to being involved in making it happen. So he helped really in launching that project. And in pre-pandemic days, I tour a lot all over the world, teaching and performing, and hopefully that will return someday. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Nice. And you, Keith, already talked about how you guys met, you and Barba. And yeah, that's really something that could be a good start for us in this talk. If you guys could talk about a little more about this, how you met him and what was that initial impact. Perhaps we can spin the other way around now if you want to start us off, Keith, on that. And then we can flow into more free conversation.
Sure. Like I said, in 2008, late one night, I was surfing the internet and I came across a video of Barbatuques. It was the first time I'd seen them, first time I'd heard of them, and I was completely blown away by the work. It was just so beautiful and powerful, as it still is. And so I immediately, I looked up a contact for Barba and I immediately wrote him, and he immediately wrote me back. And it was one of those moments of synchronicity where Stephen Harper, great tap dancer there from Rio, had given Barba one of my videos just days before I sent him this email. And he said, "This is so strange because I was about to write to you." It felt meant to be. It's like this crossing of paths. So we immediately kind of struck up a friendship via email and telephone. And then shortly after that, I went to Brazil to meet him and to meet the group and to discuss the possibility of their coming to the United States for this festival that I had been thinking about, the first International Body Music Festival. And it went from there. Within a few months later, the entire group, or 12 of them, I think it was, came to the U.S. and they performed in the first IBMF, and they've been graciously involved ever since. So, and our friendship just grew and grew. We became really close friends and collaborators. But I have to stress the friendship part because it's very special being a friend to that man. He had a lot of great qualities to him.
Yeah, I was already mentioning a little bit about how I met Barba in 2010 in Istanbul. Was that at the festival? And I was really fresh and new to that scene, so I was just wow with everything that's happening there. And Barbatuques particularly was one of these things where I was flashed by the multiplicity of things happening, by the sound they created and the beauty of the presence on stage as well. And I remember going to the workshops and to the concerts, and I was sitting there in the stage with a friend, just watching what was happening on the stage. And Bob is over there, maybe I can talk to him, maybe I can ask him about what's happening in Brazil, if you can go there and study. And I was kind of shy about it, and talking and watching the performance and trying to decide whether I'd have the courage to talk to him, And then I just had this whistling sound making behind me, and I was like, "Oh, it's calling me," kind of. And that's kind of his way of getting in touch with people, just with sound and looks. And it was very easy to go into an encounter with him and to feel this invitation that he has and had in his person, this presence of drawing people to him and drawing people to this art of making music and drawing people to this exchange and being free with it, actually. Yeah, and just, I think the year after I came to Brazil, well, that was the same year actually, and he'd given me some contact details of the study group that used to happen on Tuesdays and Wednesdays at Morro do Querosene. And it was just very special to go there and meet all these people who were studying some repertory of Barbatuques, some exercises of Barba, and just dive into this world of sound and gesture and ideas that come with it. Yeah, that just went back and back and back and back again because I couldn't get enough. And over the years, I just got very close to Barba. We regularly met when I was there, just going out for lunch. And he invited me to play together with Barbatuques as well, eventually some concerts and record some tracks for the IU album. It was a very, very special experience as well to go to the studio and be there with them. It was all very relaxed and very special too, in a way that it was so detailed and dedicated to everything.
Yeah, I remember.
It's a lot to tell. It's a surprise.
I remember when you were here, I was part of these study groups at the time, right? When you came, and so many people came from abroad, and it was really interesting because Barba had a lot of stuff to do. But there was already a community that could carry it on its own. So we would receive a lot of people from abroad, and they would be a part of our weekly studies, and we just started to feel this international community that existed, right? And Barba was really a bridge from Brazil to the world in that aspect. And I've always wondered when they appeared in this. I imagine this community existed way before or before Barbatuques or Barba arrived in it. Right? And I always wonder what are the impacts that this style, this technique, or Barbatuques aesthetic, or this way of making music, because I think nowadays it's very much like Barba's contribution and Barbatuques' contribution is very much a part of what we would call body music, but there was a time that it wasn't, right? So I wonder if you guys have something to say about that. I mean, especially Keith, because he was there before that. Like, what was the impact that it had and that it still has? The way that the contribution that Barba and Barbatuques brought to this scene.
Well, before seeing that video in 2008, like I said, I had not heard of Barbatuques, and I'd been traveling a lot, mainly as a drummer with mainly in jazz and world music settings, and so I was doing body music in the context of those shows, and because of that, I was meeting other body musicians in the world. But at that time, most of them were traditional body musicians. They were doing things like ham bone from the United States, or kecak, vocal chanting from Bali, Indonesia, or any variety of South African gumboot dancing, any variety of traditional styles, and there was I always had really nice connections with people and connecting with them, and some improvisation, or trying to see how the style that I was doing could fit with this, and because we were just dealing with sounds, and rhythmic variations, and it was a very exciting time, but I was not meeting many people who were doing contemporary work. I felt like I was kind of floating in space in a way. So to start, in the 2000s, and to start coming across people who were in different parts of the world, like Kekacha in Turkey, they were taking traditional ideas but expanding on that, making their own, and similar to how Barba and Barbatuques were doing that, of taking the roots of a lot of Brazilian music, where it's maracatu or samba, and kind of integrating it and running it through the Barbatuques filter. So that was, those are big transitions, I think, from specifically traditional work into contemporary work, where it starts expanding and kind of stretching and bending and blending these aesthetics. And so it was really exciting to see that in Brazil. And obviously it has had a huge impact in Brazil and beyond. I wish I could speak more to the impact in South America, because I know that has been significant as well in places like Colombia with Tequila, in Argentina. I think there are just pockets in South America that Barba and the group have impacted and kind of inspired. And then in the U.S., the U.S. is a funny place. It has not been a hotbed for body music. And it's funny. We could talk about culture and why that has happened. I don't have answers, but I have ideas. But then I think beyond, other parts of North America, in Canada, there's certainly big pockets of body music, and big pockets in Eastern Canada that were directly influenced by Barba. And then Europe, of course. What happened in Europe is it exploded, and Anita can speak more to that. But I've traveled so much in Europe, for the last 20 years or so. I mean, I started traveling in Europe probably 25, maybe 30 years ago, teaching and performing. And just seeing what has happened during that time, and a lot of that has been influenced by Barba. I mean, just simply the number of people doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes acting like they invented it. And sometimes people don't know where that came from. And I like to always put the footnote in there when people don't know where it came from, because I feel like it's a really important step. But I have to say that Barba never seemed to be particularly concerned about that. Yeah. And I loved that about him. I really loved that about him, because I would talk with him and I say, Barba, guys teaching your thing, but he has no mention of you whatsoever. It's like as if he invented it. He was, whatever, He was very relaxed about that kind of stuff. But yeah, the influence, goes on and on and on. And of course, now that the group has received some commercial success, with soundtracks for major films and stuff, it just continues to spread, throughout the world.
That's so interesting. I wanna hear you about that, Anita. Also, this like how this style and has spread, and it's so interesting because if you see like Keith playing or people that studied with Keith playing, you can see that there's a style there, right? And with Barbatuques is the same thing, and like a lot of snaps. That's really a part of the style. Yeah, the mouth. I don't know how would you call that in English?
The mouth.
The mouth.
Yeah, mouth
clap?
music.
Mouth clap. I don't know.
You just call it pop.
Yeah, the pop.
No, we call it.
Yeah.
And yeah, but what I wanted to say is that it is important for us here to listen to that in Brazil, for Brazilians to know that there was, and from what you say, we can speak today of a contemporary body music international scene. We can speak of that, and to know that a Brazilian has a strong influence on that process, the formation of that scene. It's so good for us because we have this third world stigma and paradigm that interesting things always come from abroad to us and not the other way around. Yeah,
definitely not true.
Exactly. Can I just say one thing about that? I mean, I know that is true. I know that people have this kind of stigma about themselves, but the role that Brazilian arts has taken in the world, I mean, not just in body music, but in music in general, and all the styles that you have, from pop and metal to classical to folk it's such a wellspring of art and inspiration, and it just amazes me that anyone ever doubts that of themselves.
Yeah. Go ahead, Anita.
Yeah, just speaking about the international spread and so on. I mean, part of the reason why I wanted to study in Brazil was because there was a lot happening there already, which I didn't find around me at that time, which was 10 years, 11 years back. And I know there were people in Austria doing body music, but it just wasn't so interesting to me because they were all kind of, school people. So they wrote like school books or notation for how you play body music with school and so on. And there were definitely not a lot of workshops, which has changed a lot. I mean, it's exploded really, which is definitely a part of the international spread of festivals and so on, and how this connected people. I mean, it's not just about the music, and I think this is a fundamental point to mention here, that it's not just the music, it's what happens between the people when you play body music, and in groups and in encounters and whichever way you want to do it. And also workshops. I mean, if people connect to the group and people connect to the music and they feel they're in this flow and they're in the rhythm and they love it, and they go out of the place they were in, at the festival or at the workshop or at the concert, a different person somehow, and vibrating this and spreading it again. So I think this is also what I was looking for at that time, and this is what has always, what I found so contagious when I went to Brazil, is that I felt this vibe, just undulating for everybody, and this is how it spreads, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, as you said before, Baba was very generous with this as well, and I think it contributed to this multiplication.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I can speak like for Música do Círculo is the project I have, and it's so inspired by Barba and Stênio, and he always embraced what we were doing and really stimulated it. And also Stênio, he still does it, and they're like, what you guys are doing is stuff that we would like to be doing, but we have other things to do. And so this idea that it can spread, and you're not going to manage to do everything, so you need to have a community involved. And especially in the case of the Música do Círculo project, I think we specialized on that vibe. And of course, it's not just a vibe. It has a lot of technique with it, and also other influences. But really, we tapped into, and I think Anita, you were here while we were also finding that out. We were finding that, okay, there's something that's happening here while we do body music. There's something that's happening here that goes beyond the music, and that is really affecting our daily lives. And we were like, wow. And we used to talk a lot about that.
Yeah, totally. I remember the Fritura Libre encounters, the first ones, and how it spread and how it became contagious. And you certainly connect differently to people, but as you say, of course, there's a lot of technique involved. It's just how you manage the groups. And I think Baba had this, but I'm not sure if he studied it consciously, or if it was just a talent, if you call it so, to lead the groups in this very calm and very precise, but very loving way also.
And inclusive, yeah. And I've talked to, a lot of this, when we talk about Barba, we have to always mention Stênio, right? Stênio Mendes. And I remember many times talking to Barba about that. And I know, I mean, he loved that vibe and that spirit, and he worked for it really. I mean, he kept it. He was very, he felt strongly about keeping it and the way he did things. But if you wanted to talk about it, he would much rather talk about music making, the musical aspect, in my experience. And Stênio, we would talk longer about that. And yeah. And yeah, I wanted to, I had a question in mind to Keith. Going back to this moment that you described when you were developing your style, and then eventually you meet Barba and his style and his technique, and and I wonder how that felt, like someone doing the same research in a way that you did, but coming from a different role, and like, what are the things that he did that were like, whoa, that's interesting, I didn't think of that, and this these contributions that you guys shared with each other.
Yeah, well, there were so many things. We really had our different perspectives on it, and the beauty is that, for me, the beauty was that our approaches were so different that it never felt competitive.
Mm-hmm.
I never felt competition with Barba from the very beginning. He picked me up at the airport my first trip to Brazil. He picked me up to the airport. We immediately had juice, which is, we both love juice. I mean, and then I stayed at his apartment, that tiny apartment, and he was just so open with introducing me to everyone, performing with Barbatuques and Belo Horizonte on that trip, just inviting me in, and the whole group was like that. I felt like I had found my people, my tribe, where you don't have to. It's the experience that a lot of people say about like going to the International Body Music Festival. You find your people. You don't have to explain anything. Everybody kind of understands what it is, what you're doing. It may be different technique, but they get you. You don't have to justify it in any way. And it always felt that way with Barba. We just naturally fell right into a very relaxed relationship that, thankfully, and I've thought about this in the past, that it was interesting that I don't think either of us ever felt competitive. I don't know. I don't really know why. I mean, yeah, we were both doing body music, but how we were approaching was so different that I was really fascinated with the group, really fascinated with how the group works. I think that's something that it's still, I find so impressive, just how the group works together and the longevity of the group and their approach. It's so rare in this century, to find this. It's so special. And it seemed to have grown kind of organically, from those early days with Barba and Stenio and Hosoi also from the beginning there. Yeah, that has really, really impressed me for so long. Mm. Yeah. And now, even without Barba in the physical, I find the group still seems to be moving in that direction, really cohesive. I love that. It's really touching in so many levels.
Yeah. They just released a beautiful record for my kid loves it.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah.
And with arrangements and compositions only by the members of the group. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's really, I felt it was such a beautiful record. And then I was like, okay, but how can they do this live? Right? Because it's a very complicated mm-hmm. record. And then I watched some concerts and was like, wow, they're doing it. And I know how much work it goes into that, because I'm a singer and a body musician. And they're doing the work. And I was talking to Renato about it, and I was like, well, no, we keep doing it. We keep meeting every week. We keep rehearsing. We keep working. And I was thinking about that. I mean, the size that Barbatuques has in Brazilian music, it should be bigger, but it's already huge. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if there's any equivalent, like a performance group that becomes so popular in mainstream culture. I mean, Barbatuques is not mainstream so much here in Brazil. We have a mainstream artist that coincidentally is called Anita too.
I know.
She's much more mainstream than Barbatuques, but people know, especially here in São Paulo. And yeah, I think it's a very specific kind of, I don't do you guys, is Is that true? You guys think? Do you guys see any examples of?
I mean, I was thinking about this earlier on when you were talking about the spread of the body music internationally and so on. I mean, when I came to teaching to people, sometimes years back, people only say, "Ah, yeah, it's like stomp." This is one group that comes to mind, of course, that almost everyone knows who likes music. And funny thing is that they only have few numbers, which are actually body music, and the rest is percussion. But somehow it sticks in the heads of people's heads that it has something to do with rhythm and that it's contagious. And it's associated with that. And it's funny that still today, like in Europe, people who are in the body music scene and who are interested in what's happening abroad, they know about Barbatuques, but many of my students don't. So I'm always happy to continue introducing the classics, let's say, to come with Baba Papa's group. And they're like, wow, what is this? It's like, this is about 20 years old, but it's a really good piece of music. And so I think that like Barbatuques going abroad and playing shows definitely had some impact, but it's still not something that everybody knows yet.
I think you could say that about the art form in general. Those of us involved in it, it seems huge, but in terms of the world, it's a small slice of the population.
Yeah.
Of the cake.
It just makes it more special.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say.
It's a piece of the cake with a cherry on it.
Right.
It's big enough for us, right? For us to enjoy. It's big enough for us to enjoy.
And it's definitely growing kind of exponentially. If I think back to the late 70s and the early 80s and all, there was so little happening, and people really did not know what you were talking about.
Yeah, and that's what I think that all this is about. This conversations is about this growing, and it's, we always joke. I remember when I was at Omega, the Circle Songs workshop that Bobby McFerrin does, and I was there for the first time in 2012, and I eventually became part of the faculty there. But the first time I went as a participant, and I just had, for me to do this while I improvise, it's natural. It's part of my singing, I would say, and I was doing that while I was walking up and down at the Omega campus. It's like a huge campus in the woods. So you were walking a lot. And people were like, what's this? What's this that you're doing? This is awesome. Can you teach me? And I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about, like how body music in general, it just spreads. And this particular style is like, you don't have to stomp. It's like, it's very accessible, right? And so eventually, like a couple of days later, I would meet people that I did not teach them that, and they were playing. And I was like, who taught you this? No, that person taught me. It spreads like wildfire. And I'm sure that this, and I'm with Keith that it's so important for us to honor the sources. But I'm sure that Barba, you just puts a smile on his face when he sees people doing that. And I remember, coming back because people really, they associated me with that style, and I always talked about Barba to all of them. And I remember talking to Barba, you have to go to Omega, you have to go there, people have to see it, from the source. But it never happened, and I became kind of an ambassador, and for a while there was a little, because I've always worked with vocal music and with singing, and I didn't want to be the body percussion guy in the beginning, but now I do, and especially since Barba left, it's really like, I love this, I love to play this, and I love that if I get to be an ambassador to that, it's such a special role, but it spreads, and it's great to hear Keith talking about how it's spreading, and because that means that Barba's work will keep spreading. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I think also just the volume of publications has increased a lot. And I think that came also with the Barbatuques. I remember when the first years when I went to Brazil, there were some people starting to write their thesis, master dissertations and so on like Barbatuques and the impact and how they do it and how they teach workshops and so on. So there were some people actually studying this in a scientific, or at least what you call it, like university level way. And I think just this lifts it to a different area also of being accessible to other people. And then, yeah, many more books have been published and also videos, tutorials. I mean, of course, now we're in a different age already, and it's more popular to just publish some tutorials and so on. And it's just exploded. Like the amount of body music you get, like for free, if you want to go on YouTube and learn something.
Yeah. And one thing that comes to mind is that, and this is so special about the International Body Music Festival and all the work that Keith does, is because body music is, I don't know exactly what body music is. Keith can answer that question better, because it is not about a technique, because there are many different techniques. It's not about aesthetic, because they're sometimes very radically different aesthetic. But when people are doing it, they feel they're doing something that has a connection to each other, right? And yeah, I would like to hear from you about that. And in this diversity of styles and aesthetics, you have this different flavor that is Barbatuques and Barba's work. I would love to hear you about this different flavor, and what do you think that this specific flavor brings to the pot?
Are you asking anyone specifically?
I'm asking you specifically.
Oh, okay. So you're asking me to define body music? Is that what you're asking? Well,
yeah.
I mean,
how
I think about it is, I think it's probably the oldest music. It's probably the first music, first of all. Before we were making instruments, we were probably clapping and stomping and grunting to express our musical ideas, and there are these traditional styles all over the world. They still exist all over the world. And then more and more of these contemporary styles that we've been talking about. But I think of it as, any kind of using the sounds of the body, clapping, slapping, snapping, stepping, vocalizing. And, I started calling it body music in 1978, and I decided to call it that rather than body percussion or body drumming. I mean, there are many names for this, and they're all totally legitimate. But the reason I went with body music is because I do use the voice a lot. So I can have melody and I can have harmony. So to me, that's more than just the percussive side. So that's why I call it body music. It was kind of a larger musical experience. And I think of it like an umbrella that, there are lots and lots of styles that go under this topic, both traditional and contemporary. So it's very broad in how it can be interpreted. I think of choral music as body music. It's like just any of that can be created by the body. So yeah, and did that answer your question?
Yeah, and I wanted to hear you guys about, like, you have this huge umbrella and with so many different flavors, and I wonder, I often think about, okay, you have more styles that are more connected to dance, and others are more connected to music, and so many different ways of doing it, and because it's not just the result, the aesthetic result, but there's also the way that you get there is so different. And yeah, and in that way, I think that's my question to both of you is, like, I remember, for example, at Ghana, when we were at IBMF, like I was participating in a Melody workshop,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was teaching one, and Melody guys were there, Melody integrants were there, and it's such radically different work, but we all loved the two experiences. And so yeah, I guess I would like to hear you about that in this diverse scene. Where does Barbatuques' style and Barba's style fit?
May I just say one thing about the Melody experience? First of all, for people who don't know, Melody comes from the United States, and the roots of their music, their work, their contemporary group, but the roots is from stepping, which is an African American style of body music that comes out of the fraternities and sororities, those clubs at the university and college level. And it's a source of pride, and it's very competitive, and it's very aggressive body music. So it kind of stomps. It's hard, and it's fast, and it's really dynamic, and it's like, and the great thing about, it's like talking about where does Barbatuques lie in this field. So with stepping, it's like, it's all about, we are the best, we're the best. And it's like, yeah, we're the best. And at the festival, everybody's like, yeah, you are the best. Rather than pushing back, it was like, yeah. And it's so interesting to see, like stepping next to Barba's work, because they're like different planets in a way, right? Because you got it's so gentle in a way, and yet it can be really dynamic as well. I'm not saying, that's not there, but it's a really different approach. And then just one more thing I wanted to say that Anita touched on that got me to thinking about it. I think a big part of body music and its success and why people are drawn to it is because you can do it in groups of people. And it's that connection that Anita was talking about, that synchronicity or attrainment that happens when people are playing together, whether they're playing the exact same rhythm together or complementary rhythms. It creates a certain kind of state that people really respond to. It's that synchronicity with other people. And there's something very human about that is so attractive, and we need this kind of stuff. And in a lot of ways, I think body music is like an antidote to life in this century, which is very fast-paced and very technologically oriented. We're all on our phones and our computers constantly. And body music really puts us in touch with ourselves, no pun intended, but literally, it's a very tactile thing. So it does put us in touch with ourselves. And if we're doing it with other people, those rhythms put us in touch with those other people as well. So it really creates something much bigger than playing a little song, or doing a little dance.
Totally does. And I think you can't reduce it to just this, just play it, I don't know, just very real. And as I said, it's so funny, like how people can forget that it's actually the original way of music making, and that it's something that's just a human necessity of playing and being in touch with yourself. I also had this same experience that you were touching upon early on, that people come to me workshops for like, did you invent this, like body music? It surprises me.
And Anita, so I didn't know that you coming to Brazil was in the beginning, like in the beginning part of your like body music journey, let's say.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, and I wonder how much, for example, how much of the things that you experience here in Brazil, and specifically, I wonder about the improvisation games that we had that Barba and Stenya would use a lot. So just to give some context, sometimes I forget that we're not just the three of us. And by the way, thank you for the contextualization on Melody, Keith.
That's okay.
So these improvisation games, the way, different activities, different ways for us to improvise together with body and voice, and we would call them games, and we'll have names and rules for each one of them, and that Barba and Stenio developed and shared with us. And like they said, they don't really say they invented it, but they like organized it. And, because some are very simple and essential things. And how do you feel that is present in your work today? Like, and Anita does so much work in Europe with body music.
Yeah, it's definitely present very much. It's changed over the years, of course, what I teach as well. And when I came back from Brazil, it was like, this is it. I want to just share it. Of course, I was referring back to the masters. But it's even if I don't teach these games so much nowadays, I think it's still there. This trying to maintain this openness that everything can change, that you have in improvisation, which is also something that carries me in teaching. You know, when you teach a workshop, you have to have this attitude of you have an idea, not to say a plan of what could happen here, but it's an improvisation too, it's an experiment, and in a structured way.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, I remember when talking to Barba, for example, there's one exercise that we call the arrow, and you just pass something from one person to the other, and it's something
so simple and so powerful and so important. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we know thousands of maybe hundreds of variations of it. But I also see parallels, of course, to other areas where, like in theater, improv theater, you use this game a lot in different ways. The aim of making it something that's dynamic for the group, that actually makes people look at each other and interact is there. So it's not just about music, but again, about how we bring the people together.
Yeah, and that's what Barba said when we were talking about the arrow and something about the retreat, and we were like, we always invited him to the Música do Círculo retreats. Música do Círculo is this project I have with Ronaldo Crispim and Pedro Consorti, and that is parallel to my work here at Sesc. And Barba would go to these retreats, and we would say to him sometimes, like, you know, Barba, we're using your thing, you can see it. And he's like, yeah, but we were like, we're stealing it from you and doing our thing, creating our thing from it. And he was like, oh, okay, but I stole it from theater also, and, you know, made it my own thing. So that's how it goes. And he was, yeah, he wanted to see things grow. And like, I know from seeing your workshops now how much you develop your own way of making body music with people, and inspired in so many experiences you had. And of course your experience here in Brazil is one of them, right? And that is such a, I remember when I went to Omega for the first time, and I noticed I went there as a learner, and I never imagined I had something to contribute. But I was at study group with Fritos, like studying Barba's and Stenio's thing for years. And I just getting there, and I noticed, all right, we have all this repertoire of activities that we can refer to look at the structures of what's happening and describe them. And I remember that in the Circle Songs workshop, there is a parallel there. It's a lot of the same principles of improvisation, but not using body percussion sounds, only singing. And I remember that they would call everything a circle song. So like what we would call here, like the different games and the different structures. Oh, this is a circle song like this, or a circle song like that, or a circle song like this. And I was, wow. So, and I remember, oh, in Brazil, we named this, and we named this, that. And people were like, wow, come, let me write it down. And that was like when I noticed, okay, there's something there. Yeah, and you know, this still happens. This was like almost 10 years ago. And this still happens nowadays. when people see me working, see me leading, and they want to know what was there, what happened, and then I talk to them. I'm like, okay, this I use this structure, and then I flow to this other structure, and then I change to that structure, and these structures are variations of those improv games that Barba shared in his workshops. And I guess what I'm talking about here is this ramification, right? Like how we can all inspire each other and feed on each other, and then like a tree branching out, many different branches. That I really feel they come from. Well, I don't know where they come from, because if you look at the roots of the roots of the roots of everyone has the roots, so I don't know where it comes from originally, but we're all drinking in this well, and Barba and Staniel and Keith and Bobby McFerrin, all these people have such a they're a part of this well. They created this well for us to drink from.
Okay, and talking, yeah, certainly. And talking about sources, I just remember another element of sources. As I said, like Barbara said, also that he was stealing from other techniques, but there's also culture, which is a huge source. And I think that's one of the things that also attracted me to Brazil at that moment, is the popular culture. And that's also where Barbatuques, you mentioned it in the beginning, Keith, when you're talking about their style and so on, draws a lot of their material from all these rhythms and festivals and celebrations that we have in Brazil, and the different qualities they have, the different moods it creates.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a huge influence anyway, and what really made a big difference in my experiences in Brazil as well, not just going to the body music study groups, but also having these, like just going to the Festival do Boi, for example, which is a popular culture festival that happens also in Sao Paulo, but it's usually from the north of Brazil, actually say in the north of Brazil. And just having these late night experiences of being in the middle of a lot of people with all these sounds and images around, I think it's something that really feeds your creative imaginary and your musical experience in life, and the qualities that you can bring to whatever you do. And I think there's also something that attracts many people that come to maybe your workshops now with the Música Corporal project, maybe.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Keith, how much of Brazil do you see, or did you see in Barba? You know, that is an interesting question. Like,
so much. I mean, for one thing, Barba downloaded an unbelievable amount of Brazilian music onto my computer every time I would go. So I have this enormous library now of the major composers throughout popular music history in Brazil. I mean, I felt like he was quintessentially Brazilian to me. I mean, he really embodied so much about Brazil that I love. In particular, again, the musical, as well as just style and the being, the vibe, I keep coming back to Saudade. I mean, I felt like he really opened my eyes and thoughts about that term and what that means and how powerful that is and how Brazilian that is. And it's all those things, all those cultural things. I felt like he really did embody so much, at least as an outsider. This was my impression. And also that came about by, I was also traveling to Sao Paulo, mainly to Sao Paulo and to Rio and Recife. And so, which is, each place is very different, and the culture is different within those places. But in that comparative view, it's still very limited. I mean, Brazil is a huge country, right? And those are three places, important places, but three places of many, many. But just in the context of all the people that I was meeting in those three places, primarily in those three places, I just felt like Barba was so Brazilian in that context. I felt like he was such a good representative.
And you know, Keith, is it's so interesting because I kind of had that experience also, and people seeing my country, like people from outside seeing my country in me, and it's really weird because you don't know which is which, you know, what is you and what is your culture, and
Right.
and where you come from,
And are you representing the entire country? Yeah.
yeah, exactly, and like yeah, yeah, and but at the same, and I remember like thinking, oh, this is not true. It's just that they're projecting Brazil in me, and then eventually realizing, no, there is a lot of truth to that, and that makes me like look at Barba's contribution to the music scene and to the international music scene as indeed a Brazilian contribution. Like there is a Brazilian spirit that he shared there, and that helps us to understand well Brazilian culture. And it's so weird because it's such a huge country, so many different cultures, but perhaps yes, there is some essence that Barba's work represents. For sure, people see that. And people see that when they go
Totally.
to workshops.
I think one of the big things is playfulness. That is one word that stands out for me for Brazil. And just comparing, for example, Baba liked all these games for figuring out like how you superimpose certain measures on others, and how you just coordinate your hands in different ways and your body in different ways, you know. And there were many games to just mess up your mind, you know, just to try and how can you play this together with that. But he always did it in a very different way than I know European teachers, or at least German-speaking teachers. Maybe this is also a very cultural thing, you know, of going about it. So we have this rigid way of going. You have to study this now. Now dissect it. Let's do it with the metronome. Now you have to get it. Now we break it down again. You know, you have to really study. It doesn't work out. And Baba always had this like, oh, this is fun. Oh, mess it up. Oh, what did you do here? It's like completely different attitude.
Yeah, and he would learn so much from the American way or German way, French way of also doing body music. I remember him talking about this when coming back from the IBMFs. Like we have so much to learn from these guys, from those guys, from those guys, and yeah, I mean there are amazing things happening in this scene, right, Keith? Like really beautiful work that's so inspiring all around the world.
Yeah, you know, one thing that I love about this scene is seeing Barbatuques grow, but also hearing and seeing the influences of other groups on them. For instance, the impact of Ketchak on Barbatuques. I hear it so much in the later recordings. The impact of Kekacha, the Turkish group. You know, you see it there. It's so interesting. And this is one thing that is kind of double-edged for me in the body music world, because in those early days, I felt like in the early festivals, you would see all these groups and they were really distinct. Everybody had their own distinct technique, and you know, they're very different, specific way of approaching it. And now, as time has passed, we're all kind of, everybody's doing everyone's techniques. You know, it's all blending into this beautiful thing. But I miss in some days those days of distinction. You know. those early
That's
days.
so interesting.
It is interesting, isn't it? I mean, that's the way art moves, you know. I mean, that's what happens. We influence each other.
Yeah.
And globalization also, it looks like it's in this microcosmos, globalization happening, right?
Mhm.
And this is happening in all levels,
Yeah,
I guess.
absolutely.
Yeah, Barba, you loved to lead Ketchaki at the Música do Círculo retreats
Mhm.
uh, before the surgery and after he
Mhm.
had the surgery. Also, I remember him like very complex Ketchaki. He was leading like 2 bars and and I remember him like I was very impressed at him doing that even after the even with his health impaired.
Yeah, I was sorry we never got Barba to Bali. The year that we did the festival there, he was having some inner ear problems, and he was not flying,
Hmm.
and so he couldn't make it. Many of the people in the group came, and he certainly had the experience with Dewa, you know, and the Balinese that were involved in other IBMFs. But I was that was one thing I was sorry that we never got him to Bali, because I know he would have enjoyed that so much.
Yeah. Did you want to say something, Anita? I noticed you. Okay, I noticed you open your mic. Yeah, this is really interesting. The input back, right?
Mhm.
And how it manifests in Barbatuques music, and how Barbatuques can be a bridge from for Brazilians to body music, and that's really an important bridge that we could cross, and to just more and more people get involved in this community that like you both said, it transcends the music making, and it is an antidote to some of our contemporary uh, problems and
Mm.
dilemmas and diseases even.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and now speaking of diseases, we're all we're all coming back from this pandemic. I'm really curious about how it has been for you guys, how things are looking over there. And the way that connects to our talk is just because uh, we're keeping up with the work, right? We're continuing with the work, and we're continuing to make this art form grow, and that is a way of just keep talking about Barba and keep sharing also his music. And so how you guys, how are your communities in that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, they're just things that you can't replace by online workshops, of course, as we all know. But I think everybody's desperate to go back to real life events. I mean, here in Austria, things are looking pretty well at the moment. Everybody getting vaccinated, and numbers are going down, and opening. And I think we're in good
Are you already
steps.
teaching?
I'm going back to it now. Yeah.
Nice.
So, but of course, this pandemic was very strange in terms of how it had shifted to all these just online. And there were a lot of online offers, and initially I was refusing to teach online because I was like, not so sure if this can work. But after I was kind of forced to do it, I discovered that some things would work well, and okay, we could do it. But yeah, just not the full story.
I've been teaching a fair amount online. I soon shifted over to online, both for performing. I did a lot of performances in the beginning, and then I just started feeling I was not enjoying it after a while, the performing experience. So I kind of pulled back from that. I continued teaching, And the thing that I do like about it, before the pandemic, I was traveling so much, kind of all over the world, which I do like, and I hope to return to someday. But what I liked about the teaching online is that in a single class, I could have people from all over the world. And I love that. You know, I had people getting up at 2 or 3 in the morning in Hong Kong in order to take a class, you know. And I felt like there was an intimacy, that it is possible to achieve intimacy to a certain level. Of course, I miss being able to get multiple parts going on, you know, at any given moment. There's certain things I really miss, and just the actual physical contact with people I really miss and look forward to again. But there are some things I really found satisfying. And I also really worked on my educational materials, my offerings on my website, creating a lot of new lessons and series for teachers and series for students and those sorts of things. I've been playing a lot of drums, which is my first true love, and really enjoying that. I've been playing music in my yard with friends, kind of at a distance throughout the pandemic. Yeah, so those have been the major kind of creative outlets. I've started gigging again. I've maybe played 4 live shows, which feels still kind of strange, but I have two coming up this weekend also. I've still not returned to live teaching, so hopefully that will come back sometime soon. Things are opening up in the States as well. But I'm not quite ready to travel internationally, I don't think. The other thing I've been doing is building a tiny house. I'm fascinated with building. I have been for a long time, but I've kind of taken this as the opportunity to kind of jump into a real project. So I'm building this like 500 square foot house.
Wow.
Sounds nice, yeah. I've also moved house.
Say it again.
I've also moved house. I haven't built it myself, but just moving.
That is, you can combine these two things. So since you don't know how when you're gonna travel again, so you're building a house for people to come visit you and work with you. Does it fit me, Keith?
Yes. Yes, it will. It will. It's you know, it's small, but and I'm really, you know, I'm looking at alternative energy, and just it's a fascinating project. And to me, in some strange way, it's the same thing as doing body music. It's all kind of the same in a way. The exploration and the rhythmic side of it, the flow of the project, you know, I see a lot of parallels.
Yes. And Keith and Anita, before we go, you mentioned your offerings, right, Keith? I think it would be a great idea to share that with people who are watching us. Like, how can I go deeper into what you're doing, what you guys are doing, like websites or lessons?
You can go to Keith Terry. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that opportunity. If you're interested, you can find me at keithterry.com or crosspulse.com, either one. It'll take you to the same place. And in the store there's lots of, I've been creating mini lessons, short lessons, 10, 12, 15-minute lessons, taking a specific challenge and kind of working through it in a quick way. In lots of series of those, and also ways of kind of, you know, categorizing them by level or topic, lots of different ways of searching them. And there's a 12-part series for teachers, like half-hour lessons, 12 of those, how to incorporate more body music into your classroom. There's a short series for students that I work directly with young children. And just kind of several variations, new things that I've been exploring. So yeah, keithterry.com.
Nice.
Thank you.
Nice. I haven't been as productive because I have 2 small kids at the moment. And when I recorded my online course, I was just pregnant with my second. So this was just the last moment to do this. So I have this course on Udemy, but it's a bit different from what I usually teach. It's just very set rhythms that you can play to music. And
it's a Udemy.
Udemy. But it's also on my homepage. Just go to
which is
anitagritsch.org.
But Anita, you also have a beautiful new video out as well.
I do, I got a grant to shoot a video.
Yeah.
Arrange a song, which I was very happy about. So this is one of the upsides of the pandemic, I think, is that many governmental grants were going out. So lots of artists got the chance of actually get some money to do projects. And it's one of them, yeah.
Nice.
Thank you.
And we can find that on YouTube, Anita, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's also on my homepage. Okay. Just a landing page.
Nice. Okay.
Hey, Zuza, may I also mention that we have IBMF has a curated YouTube channel for body music, and currently there are more than 80 videos there. It's free. You can just visit internationalbodymusicfestival.com. You can go through there through YouTube. It's a YouTube playlist, so you just sign up and it's for free. But it's got some really beautiful work, and there's performance, there's educational stuff, there's just documentary, archival material, all kinds of material, but from all over the world.
And that is at the International Body Music Festival
.com. You can find it there, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Or also the YouTube channel, but you can go there through the website.
Nice. I haven't checked that out yet, so I'll make sure to check that out. Nice. This is very inspiring, just the amount of stuff we have out there, and that you're putting out there, Keith, makes me want to go there and watch all those lessons. And for people in Brazil, I mean, really, I think body music has this advantage that your English doesn't have to be perfect for you to learn somebody music, because there's the body language happening there. And although here in Brazil we have so much and so many people offering such interesting stuff, but we also have so much to learn from the international community. So I really strongly advise everyone to really check out this community and what people are doing, and starting with Keith, because there's so many stuff there, and checking out Anita's work and her page, and that's just a doorway right into so much stuff.
Hey, Zuza, I want to acknowledge the work that you've been doing, though, also, and the contributions that you have provided, and also the Música de Círculo, with your partners. It's really powerful work, and it's really good work, and thank you for continuing.
I think, actually, talking about the international aspect, you've grown the European community a lot as well, because so many people have been going there and coming back and getting inspired.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that. And yeah, it has been really special, and just and coming from a place of really never originally not thinking that we could bring a contribution, and then seeing that contribution, it's just being a part of this special family. And yeah, you can check musicadocirculo.com. We're gonna have a new site coming on, and we're thinking January retreats. We're planning in that direction, and yes, and that is for us just the best way to keep Barba's legacy and Barba's name alive, and his work, because really, like I said in the beginning, Barba carried this, and Barbatuques, the whole group, of course, but Barba especially, he would do the gatherings at Morro do Querosene, and he would do like study groups, and people with not much body music experience would go, and he would teach them. And I always thought like he didn't have to do that. I mean, But he loved it. He just loved being with the people, making music. And so he really carried the torch and put a lot of effort into it. And as someone who does that work too, we just know how much effort it takes. And not everyone is like, lots of people find this work very interesting, but not everyone is willing to put the effort to make things happen and to make workshops and performance groups and communities happen. And he did that. And now it's up here in Brazil, it's up to so many people from the community to keep this going and to make the effort. And so bringing people like you guys, it's very inspiring that way. And yeah, and you know, just as a last subject or as a last question for you guys, I would like to ask you how do we go on inspired by Barba's legacy? So how right now in the present moment in our journey, and of course we have Keith, like with such a long journey, the creator of this story, and we have me and Anita joining more recently in the story at different moments. But how do we feel that Barba can still contribute to our present moment and inspire us? So what's from the many elements that he brought, what is the one thing that you say, you know, I keep doing this because it's a way to keep this legacy alive? I guess that's the question. Is that clear?
I think so. For me, his art is inspiring and enduring and will remain enduring. It's a bit timeless. But how he did it, the spirit with which he did it, the generosity with which he did it, I find even more powerful to me personally. And then as a dear friend, just one of my favorite friends of my lifetime, will also continue inspiring me. You know, he's there. He's a part of all of us. You know, who knew him, who were touched by his work, whether you met him or not. He's a part of all of us, and he will continue in that way.
Absolutely, I can only add to this a little bit, because I also think that it's timeless, and as said, generosity is one of the big points. And for me, the patience with which he taught always stood out. I'm particularly not a very patient person, but I think I grew my patience studying with him as well and watching him teach the same thing very slowly over and over again. I think many people had the experience with him, and it just taught me to have this patience with other people as well, and to respect the learning process of each and every person. And this is something that I like to transmit as well in my work, to look at your own learning process and go with your own time and take the time you need with it. Yeah. And also this enjoying the silence after playing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For me, I feel so connected to this way that Barba, the way he did it, and the spirit. But when I think of how do I make him present, I'm like, I want to touch my chest. I want to snap. Yeah. And like, I want to get people to do this, you know, because he loved it so much, and it feels so good.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I just want to get people into it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's a beautiful thing to see. And just the other day, yesterday I was at the park, and for the first time in, like, I don't know, a year, with some four other people from the community, and we were playing arrow, just looking at each other and passing claps. And then we started doing some games and improvising, and just noticing, people in the park looking, wow, that's so interesting. That's just Barba right there, his impact. Yeah. So, and I'm sure we will be doing this together soon enough.
I'm so ready.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anita.
Thank you, Zuza. It's been a pleasure, really.
Thank you, Zuza. And it's great to see you, Anita.
It's really
great to see you, Keith.
Yeah, I really want to stress how much Keith means to the whole body music community all around the world. He's our reference, and so it's really an honor to have you here, Keith.
It's an honor to be here.
And I think this is a wrap. We have no more lives. Normally at the end I announce the next ones. We don't have any more for now on this subject, but we have many others. The Music Center of Sesc has many other lives and events and courses. So just subscribe to the YouTube channel and just follow us on all the other social media, and we meet soon. Yeah, and watch the previous ones, please. They were so beautiful. Maybe one day we'll subtitle them in English, Keith. And Anita, since you understand English, amazing conversations we had.
I'm sure.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.